Imagine stepping aboard the RMS Titanic in 1912, a ship heralded as the largest and most luxurious vessel ever constructed, a floating palace designed to impress the entire world. To step onto her decks was to enter a universe of grandeur, a world entirely separate from the streets of Southampton or the bustle of New York Harbor, a world reserved for the wealthiest, the most influential, and the most ambitious people of the early 20th century. The Titanic was not merely a vessel for crossing the Atlantic. It was a symbol of human ingenuity, of a society obsessed with progress and prestige, and a statement that the age of the great ocean liners had reached its zenith. Every element of her construction, from the gleaming hull to the meticulously crafted interiors, spoke of ambition, pride, and a desire to push the boundaries of comfort and style. For the first-class passengers, boarding the Titanic was not simply about travel. It was about entering a lifestyle, about stepping into a world where the ordinary rules of society no longer applied, and where luxury was the expectation rather than the exception. The experience began long before passengers even set foot on the gangway. Wealthy travelers arrived at the docks in Southampton in carriages drawn by horses with polished harnesses, their polished wheels squeaking slightly against the cobblestones. Attendants, wearing crisp uniforms and polished boots, hurried to lift trunks, luggage, and personal effects from the vehicles and deposit them onto the docks. Porters, meticulously trained and aware of the priceless nature of many of the belongings they were handling, moved with silent efficiency. The air was a mixture of scents: fresh paint from the ship, the salt of the sea, polished wood, and the faint aroma of cigars and perfume from the gathering elite. Conversations floated through the dockyard, a mixture of polite greetings, murmurs of anticipation, and speculation about the grandeur of the Titanic itself. Passengers were acutely aware of their place in this hierarchy. Their clothing was immaculate, from the tailored suits and stiff collars of the men to the gowns, gloves, and elaborate hats of the women. Every detail was a statement of wealth, of taste, of social standing. Here, every gesture, every nod, every smile was part of a carefully choreographed dance, a performance that reinforced status as much as it expressed genuine excitement. When the passengers finally stepped aboard, the first impression was unforgettable. The gangway led them into a world that was almost cathedral-like in its grandeur. The first sight to greet them was the grand staircase, a sweeping structure of polished oak, wrought iron railings, and delicate carvings that seemed to spiral upward into an open atrium bathed in natural light. Crystal chandeliers hung overhead, catching the light and scattering it across the polished floors and walls, creating a glimmering effect that was both dazzling and intimidating. To some, it may have seemed almost unreal, a fantasy made tangible in wood and glass, a place where one could lose oneself in the sheer beauty of the craftsmanship. The staircase was more than a mere architectural feature. It was a statement, a stage set for the arrival of the elite, a symbol of the Titanic's promise of sophistication and refinement. It was here, in this moment, that the passengers first sensed the divide between the world they were leaving behind and the realm of luxury that awaited them. The public spaces beyond the staircase were equally impressive. Salons, lounges, and smoking rooms were meticulously decorated, each with its own character and purpose. Rich woods, plush carpets, velvet upholstery, and intricate paneling adorned every room, and the attention to detail was astonishing. The smell of polished wood mingled with the faint scent of leather, tobacco, and flowers in the lounges, creating an atmosphere that was both inviting and exclusive. Staff moved quietly and efficiently, their presence almost ghost-like, ensuring that every need could be anticipated and met before it was even expressed. For first-class passengers, this was the first taste of life aboard a vessel designed to prioritize comfort, status, and elegance above all else. Even the corridors between the rooms were a testament to design and craftsmanship. Carpets with intricate patterns cushioned every step, while brass fixtures glimmered along the walls, and delicate sconces provided warm lighting in the evenings. Passengers would often pause just to take in the surroundings, to admire the polished woodwork and the meticulous detailing that seemed to extend into every corner of the ship. Every surface had been considered, every material chosen for its quality, its durability, and its aesthetic appeal. To walk these corridors was to be reminded constantly that one was not aboard an ordinary ship, but a floating palace, a world apart from the humdrum realities of land-based life. The boarding process itself carried with it a sense of ceremony. Passengers were greeted by the captain and senior officers, their uniforms pristine, their bearing formal. Handshakes, polite conversation, and inquiries about the journey ahead added to the sense that this was not merely travel, but an event, a social occasion of considerable importance. Many passengers took this moment to explore the ship, stepping onto the decks to watch as the dockyard activity continued, or to peer into the open spaces and admire the architecture. The sense of scale was overwhelming. This was a vessel unlike any other, a city afloat, designed to carry thousands of passengers in varying degrees of comfort, yet with first-class accommodations reserved for those who demanded nothing less than perfection. Luxury was everywhere, and it was subtle as well as grand. Every detail of the environment had been carefully considered. Even the smallest touches, from the engraved door handles to the embroidered linens, were intended to convey a sense of refinement and exclusivity. First-class passengers, accustomed to comfort but rarely exposed to such scale, were both impressed and, for some, slightly overwhelmed. There was a thrill in recognizing that this was a ship built not only to travel but to impress, to make a statement about the ambitions of its owners and the aspirations of its passengers. Beyond the physical experience, the atmosphere on board was one of anticipation and excitement. Passengers spoke of the journey to come, of the promise of the open Atlantic, of the elegance and exclusivity that awaited them. There was a palpable sense of pride among the first-class passengers, a feeling that they were part of an exclusive group, privileged not only by wealth, but by their very ability to partake in such an extraordinary experience. Conversations ranged from the mundane to the intellectual, covering topics from politics and business to art and literature. The social environment was as carefully curated as the physical one, and passengers understood that their behavior, their conversation, and even their choice of companions would reflect on their social standing. Staff members, from the stewards and valets to the maids and waiters, played a crucial role in shaping this experience. They moved with precision and grace, performing tasks that ranged from the mundane arranging luggage and delivering messages, to the highly specialized, such as preparing private suites or orchestrating formal events. Their presence was unobtrusive yet essential, and their work allowed passengers to immerse themselves fully in the illusion of a world where all desires and needs could be anticipated and met effortlessly. For the first-class passengers, this was part of the enchantment, the knowledge that they could relax, enjoy, and be served in a manner that reflected their status and their expectations. The excitement of boarding the Titanic extended beyond the ship itself to the possibilities of the journey. First-class passengers anticipated the thrill of dining in the main saloon, of attending formal dances, of taking leisurely promenades on the deck as the ship glided over the Atlantic waves. They looked forward to reading in the libraries, engaging in conversation in the lounges, and observing the world from the vantage point of a ship that represented the pinnacle of human achievement. To them, the Titanic was not just a means of travel, it was a destination, a symbol of modernity, luxury, and status, a world unto itself where every detail had been considered and every experience designed to impress, delight, and satisfy. The boarding process was also a moment of human drama. For some, it was a reunion with friends or family members who had traveled together. For others, it was the thrill of entering a world entirely new, of stepping into the unknown while surrounded by beauty, elegance, and comfort. There was an undercurrent of curiosity. Passengers wanted to see the cabins, the dining rooms, the lounges, the promenade decks, and the spaces reserved for the crew. They wanted to experience firsthand the reality behind the stories of luxury that had circulated in the newspapers and social circles. And as they moved through the corridors and public spaces, their anticipation grew, fueled by the combination of human ingenuity, design excellence, and sheer scale that the Titanic represented. Boarding the Titanic in first class was, in every sense, a performance. It was an opportunity to see and be seen, to display taste, wealth, and sophistication, and to enter a world that was both exclusive and awe-inspiring. The ship's design encouraged movement, exploration, and observation, allowing passengers to engage with the environment in a way that reinforced their sense of privilege. Each step, each glance, each interaction was part of a carefully orchestrated experience, a dance that highlighted the elegance, comfort, and grandeur of life aboard the Titanic. It was a world where every expectation was met, where every desire could be anticipated, and where the ordinary rules of travel and social behavior were suspended in favor of a more luxurious, more refined, and more spectacular reality. The grandeur of boarding was not limited to visual and spatial impressions. There was also a psychological impact, the realization that this journey, this ship, this environment was unlike anything most people had experienced. The sense of scale, the attention to detail, the orchestration of social life, and the meticulous preparation of staff all contributed to an overwhelming feeling of being part of something exceptional. First-class passengers understood, perhaps instinctively, that they were living in a moment of history, aboard a vessel that would come to symbolize both the pinnacle of human achievement and the fragility of human endeavor. In that sense, boarding the Titanic was not just a logistical process. It was an initiation, a passage into a world of luxury, elegance, and possibility, where every expectation was exceeded and every detail reinforced the idea that this journey was something extraordinary, something that would be remembered long after the passengers disembarked, for better or worse. The first-class cabins aboard the Titanic were far more than mere sleeping quarters. They were private sanctuaries, small worlds unto themselves, crafted to reflect both the wealth and the taste of the passengers who would inhabit them. Stepping inside one of these rooms was like entering a carefully curated home, complete with furnishings, decor, and appointments that rivaled the finest residences on land. For the elite, the cabins were more than a place to rest. They were symbols of status, of refinement, and of the belief that no detail of comfort should ever be left to chance. Every aspect of the design, from the selection of materials to the arrangement of furniture, spoke to the shipbuilders' and designers' obsession with luxury, elegance, and sophistication. Upon entering a standard first-class cabin, one was immediately struck by the richness of the materials. Polished mahogany paneling lined the walls, its deep, warm tones accentuated by delicate carvings and decorative moldings that drew the eye upward. Brass fixtures gleamed under the soft glow of wall lamps, casting reflections across the room and creating a sense of warmth and welcome. The floors were often covered with thick, patterned carpets, woven with intricate designs in muted yet elegant colors, cushioning each step and adding a layer of soundproofing that insulated the occupants from the movement and bustle of the ship outside. For many passengers, accustomed to the more modest accommodations of everyday life, the combination of textures, colors, and materials created a sense of being transported into another world, one where comfort was paramount and every element had been considered. Furniture in the cabins was carefully selected for both function and aesthetics. Beds were often large, with comfortable mattresses supported by sturdy frames, topped with embroidered linens and plush pillows that invited relaxation. A writing desk might occupy a corner, complete with polished wood surfaces, inkwells, and stationery, allowing passengers to maintain correspondence or keep a private journal of their voyage. Armchairs, upholstered in soft fabrics, provided seating for reading or conversation, while wardrobes and chests of drawers offered ample storage space for clothing and personal items. Even the smallest touches, the placement of a vase, the angle of a chair, the pattern of the curtains, were designed to create an environment that was both practical and visually pleasing. It was an attention to detail that underscored the expectation that passengers should feel both comfortable and refined at all times. Some of the most lavish accommodations were the multi-room suites, reserved for the wealthiest individuals on board. These suites often included a bedroom, a sitting room, a private bathroom, and in some cases, even a private promenade or balcony overlooking the ocean. The furniture in these suites was often custom-made, with upholstery and finishes that reflected the latest trends in interior design from Europe and North America. The decor was carefully coordinated with colors, textures, and patterns chosen to create a harmonious and luxurious environment. Rugs might be imported from Persia or Europe. Chandeliers were often crystal, and paintings adorned the walls, each carefully selected to enhance the atmosphere of elegance and sophistication. In these suites, passengers could entertain guests, conduct business, or simply relax in an environment that rivaled the finest homes on land. The bathrooms themselves were marvels of engineering and design. En-suite bathrooms were still a rarity in 1912, and aboard the Titanic they were fitted with porcelain fixtures, brass taps, and polished wooden cabinetry. Baths were spacious and comfortable, and many included built-in showers, a feature that was considered cutting edge at the time. The water pressure and heating systems were designed to provide a level of convenience and comfort that few had ever experienced, ensuring that passengers could enjoy cleanliness and hygiene without inconvenience or compromise. For travelers who were accustomed to shared or public bathing facilities on other ships, the presence of a private, well-appointed bathroom was a sign of true luxury. Lighting in the cabins was another area where attention to detail was evident. Many first-class cabins featured electric lighting, which was still a novelty for many passengers in 1912. The soft glow of lamps and sconces created a warm and inviting atmosphere, contrasting with the harsher, colder lighting often found in second- or third-class accommodations. Shades and curtains allowed passengers to control the amount of natural light entering the room during the day, while still providing privacy and comfort. The effect was to create an environment that was both practical and aesthetically pleasing, one in which passengers could relax, read, write, or simply enjoy the view of the open ocean from the privacy of their cabin. The arrangement of the cabins also reflected a careful consideration of both privacy and convenience. Beds were positioned to maximize space while maintaining comfort, and seating areas were arranged to facilitate conversation or solitary reflection. Storage areas were ample and cleverly integrated into the room design, allowing passengers to keep their belongings organized and accessible without cluttering the space. Even small details such as hooks for clothing, shelves for personal items, and compartments for valuables were included to enhance convenience and ease of use. This meticulous attention to design ensured that passengers could move through their space comfortably, with every need anticipated and accommodated. Decorative elements added another layer of richness to the cabins. Carpets, curtains, and upholstery were often chosen to complement each other, creating a cohesive and visually pleasing environment. Wall panels might feature intricate carvings or moldings, while ceiling designs ranged from simple elegance to elaborate ornamentation. Paintings and prints adorned the walls, often depicting serene landscapes, historical scenes, or classical themes, enhancing the atmosphere of refinement and culture. Even the smallest details, from the design of door handles to the choice of light fixtures, contributed to the overall impression of luxury and sophistication. Cabins were also designed with the psychological needs of passengers in mind. Spacious layouts, ample natural light, and carefully chosen colors all contributed to a sense of calm and comfort. Soft, muted tones helped to create a relaxing environment, while the arrangement of furniture and fixtures allowed for both social interaction and private contemplation. Passengers could entertain a small number of guests in the sitting area, enjoy quiet moments of reflection, or simply take in the view of the ocean through the cabin's windows. Every aspect of the cabin's design was intended to enhance the passenger's experience, to make them feel both pampered and at ease in an environment that was both familiar and extraordinary. For families traveling together, cabins were often adapted to accommodate multiple occupants comfortably. Additional bedding, fold-out couches, or adjoining rooms allowed family members to stay close while still maintaining a sense of privacy and personal space. The ability to enjoy the journey together in such comfort was a significant enhancement over other modes of travel, reinforcing the idea that the Titanic was not just a means of crossing the Atlantic, but a space in which passengers could live, socialize, and experience luxury as part of an extended voyage experience. Beyond the physical accommodations, the cabins also reflected the social expectations of the era. Passengers were expected to maintain a certain level of decorum and refinement, and the design of the cabins reinforced these norms. The inclusion of writing desks, for example, encouraged correspondence and reflection, while the careful arrangement of seating areas facilitated polite conversation. Every element of the cabin was intended to support a lifestyle of sophistication, comfort, and exclusivity, allowing passengers to enjoy the privileges of first-class travel while maintaining the social standards of the upper echelons of society. The staff played a critical role in maintaining the experience of the cabins. Valets, maids, and stewards worked tirelessly to ensure that every need was met, that beds were made to perfection, that linens were changed, and that personal items were arranged according to the passengers' preferences. This level of service was integral to the perception of luxury, and it reinforced the idea that the first-class experience was about more than just physical accommodations. It was about being cared for, anticipating every need, and experiencing a level of attention and refinement that few had ever encountered. Even the view from the cabin windows, whether a porthole looking out to the open sea or a promenade window offering a broader perspective, was part of the experience. Passengers could watch the waves, see the sun rise or set over the Atlantic, and experience the changing moods of the ocean from the privacy and comfort of their rooms. This connection to the outside world, combined with the interior luxury, created a balanced environment in which passengers could enjoy both contemplation and indulgence, the vastness of nature and the meticulousness of human design. The psychological impact of the cabins cannot be overstated. For many passengers, stepping into their private quarters was like stepping into a carefully crafted dream. The combination of elegance, comfort, and exclusivity created an environment in which passengers felt both privileged and secure. They were removed from the hardships and inconveniences that characterized ordinary travel, able to indulge in comfort, leisure, and reflection without concern. The cabins were, in essence, microcosms of the larger world of first-class travel, a space where every expectation was anticipated, every desire accommodated, and every detail designed to reinforce the perception of a life elevated above the ordinary. Perhaps most importantly, the cabins symbolized the very promise of the Titanic itself. The ship represented not only technical achievement and grandeur, but also the possibility of transcending ordinary experience. For first-class passengers, their private rooms were the first tangible proof of that promise. They could live, even for a brief time, in a space that reflected the highest ideals of comfort, sophistication, and luxury. They could experience the pinnacle of human ingenuity and design, confident that every detail had been considered, every expectation exceeded, and every need anticipated. In this way, the cabins were more than rooms. They were statements, declarations that the Titanic was not merely a ship, but a floating palace, a testament to the ambition, wealth, and vision of the early 20th century. Dining in first class aboard the RMS Titanic was an experience unlike any other in the early 20th century, a daily ritual that combined sophistication, spectacle, and social performance. To step into the grand dining saloon was to enter a world designed to impress, to dazzle, and to reinforce the status of the passengers who filled its seats. The saloon itself stretched across 2 decks, its ceilings soaring high above polished wood floors, adorned with intricately carved panels, gilded details, and sweeping arches that drew the eye upward. Crystal chandeliers hung at regular intervals, scattering light across the room, illuminating the tables, the fine china, and the elegantly dressed passengers in a warm, inviting glow. The sheer scale of the dining room was breathtaking, capable of seating over 500 passengers at once, yet the design and arrangement ensured that even amid so many people, the experience retained a sense of intimacy and exclusivity. Every aspect of the room, from the placement of chairs to the alignment of the tables, had been carefully considered to enhance both comfort and visual appeal. As passengers entered, they were greeted by a subtle symphony of sound, the soft murmur of conversation, the faint clink of china and silverware, the gliding footsteps of waiters moving seamlessly between tables. The staff was dressed in crisp uniforms, their movements precise and practiced, almost choreographed, ensuring that every guest's needs were anticipated before they were voiced. The atmosphere was one of quiet elegance. It was never rushed, never chaotic, but always alive with energy, the perfect blend of social activity and refined decorum. Patrons found their assigned seats, often arranged to encourage conversation, networking, and the subtle performance of social status. Here, the seating chart was more than practical. It was a reflection of hierarchy, influence, and social ambition. Being seated at a prime table meant more than convenience. It meant being seen and acknowledged within the delicate social web of first-class society. The dining experience itself was a journey, a carefully curated procession of courses that showcased the culinary mastery of the Titanic's chefs and the global ambition of her owners. Menus were printed in elegant script, detailing the offerings for each meal, a declaration of sophistication that was both practical and ceremonial. Each dinner service included multiple courses, often beginning with soups and consoms, followed by seafood dishes like oysters, caviar, and poached fish, then moving on to hearty main courses of roast meats, poultry, and game. Side dishes were equally elaborate, featuring fresh vegetables, delicate sauces, and carefully prepared accompaniments. Dessert brought its own spectacle, elaborate pastries, puddings, fruits, and confections, each designed to please both the palate and the eye. Wine pairings were suggested for each course, carefully chosen to complement the flavors and to elevate the dining experience to something approaching artistry. For the first-class passengers, dining was not simply about nourishment, it was about indulgence, sensory delight, and social theater. The presentation of the food was as important as its taste. Platters arrived at the tables in perfect coordination, often accompanied by a description of the dish from the waitstaff, highlighting its provenance, its preparation, and any unique qualities that distinguished it from ordinary fare. The arrangement of each plate was meticulous, the garnishes carefully placed, the sauces drizzled with precision. The table settings themselves were works of art. Fine china, polished silverware, and crystal glasses caught the light, creating a sparkle that enhanced the perception of luxury. Napkins were folded with elegance, often in elaborate shapes, signaling both attention to detail and the sophistication of the household or establishment that had designed the service. In this environment, every aspect of the dining experience was elevated, from the first sip of champagne to the final bite of dessert, reinforcing the idea that the Titanic was not merely a ship, but a floating palace of refinement and taste. Meals were also occasions for display and social interaction. Passengers were dressed in their finest attire, reflecting both their status and the expectations of decorum. Women wore elaborate gowns, adorned with lace, embroidery, and jewelry, while men appeared in tailored suits or formal evening dress. Conversation flowed across tables, sometimes light and social, sometimes serious and businesslike, reflecting the diverse backgrounds and ambitions of those present. Luncheon and dinner were both opportunities to network, to observe the behaviors of peers, and to establish or reinforce social connections. In many ways, dining on the Titanic was as much about seeing and being seen as it was about the enjoyment of food itself. The tables were stages upon which social hierarchies were enacted, alliances subtly formed, and relationships nurtured, all under the careful supervision of an environment designed to impress and delight. The timing and rhythm of meals were also part of the experience. Courses were served in a deliberate sequence, allowing conversation and digestion to proceed in harmony. Between courses, waitstaff moved with quiet efficiency, removing empty plates, replenishing glasses, and presenting the next course with practiced grace. The pacing was never hurried. It encouraged relaxation, reflection, and interaction, providing passengers with time to savor each bite and to appreciate the ambience. Music often accompanied the meal, whether from a small ensemble playing softly in a corner or from a piano in a nearby lounge, adding a layer of sensory pleasure and refinement. The combination of food, service, and atmosphere created a dining experience that was immersive, memorable, and distinctly luxurious. Breakfast and luncheon carried their own particular charm. While dinner was formal and elaborate, breakfast offered a quieter, more personal experience. Guests could choose from a variety of options, from freshly baked breads and pastries to eggs, meats, and fruit. Tea and coffee were served, often accompanied by delicate china cups and saucers, allowing passengers to begin the day in comfort and style. Luncheon was slightly more formal, yet still lighter than dinner, with an emphasis on fresh ingredients, seasonal offerings, and delicate preparation. Afternoon tea provided another opportunity for refinement, with fine teas, sandwiches, and cakes presented on tiered trays. The ritual itself a statement of elegance and social propriety. Even the simplest meals were infused with ceremony, reinforcing the sense that life aboard the Titanic was a continuous performance of taste, culture, and sophistication. The culinary team behind these meals was extraordinary. Chefs, trained in the finest kitchens of Europe, brought skill, creativity, and discipline to every dish. They worked tirelessly in the ship's galleys, a world away from the elegance of the dining saloon, ensuring that each plate met the exacting standards demanded by first-class passengers. Ingredients were sourced from around the globe, reflecting the Titanic's ambition to provide a truly international culinary experience. Fresh produce, meats, and seafood were meticulously selected, prepared, and presented, transforming each meal into an event that went beyond sustenance to become an art form. The coordination required to serve hundreds of passengers simultaneously while maintaining the quality, temperature, and presentation of each dish was immense, yet the result was seamless, a testament to both human skill and the organizational prowess of the White Star Line. Dining on the Titanic also reflected the cultural aspirations of the era. The menus often included French terminology, classical references, and exotic ingredients, signaling sophistication and cosmopolitan taste. Passengers were expected to understand or at least appreciate the nuances of the cuisine, the quality of the wines, and the artistry of presentation. The experience reinforced a sense of belonging to a global elite, one that valued culture, refinement, and knowledge as much as wealth. For many passengers, the dining room was a microcosm of a larger social world, a place where elegance, etiquette, and taste were displayed and reinforced on a daily basis. Special events and formal dinners added yet another layer to the experience. On certain evenings, the dining room was transformed for gala events, complete with additional decorations, elaborate floral arrangements, and sometimes musical performances. These occasions were highlights of the voyage, opportunities for passengers to dress in their finest, to engage in more elaborate social rituals, and to enjoy the peak of culinary and aesthetic experience aboard the ship. The grandeur of these events reinforced the notion that the Titanic was not simply a means of travel, but a venue for extraordinary experiences designed to impress and delight at every opportunity. The spatial design of the dining room also enhanced the experience. Tables were arranged to allow for both intimacy and visibility, ensuring that passengers could engage in conversation without feeling crowded, yet still observe the broader social environment. The architecture, from the vaulted ceilings to the decorative columns, created a sense of scale and majesty, emphasizing the ship's grandeur while maintaining comfort. The combination of physical space, decor, and service orchestrated an environment that was both impressive and approachable, allowing passengers to enjoy luxury without feeling alienated or overwhelmed. Even the smallest details were not overlooked. Napkins were folded in elaborate shapes, silverware was polished to perfection, and glassware caught the light in ways that enhanced the visual appeal of the table. Condiments, sauces, and accompaniments were carefully arranged, reflecting both practicality and aesthetic sensibility. Chairs and seating were designed to be comfortable for extended periods, allowing passengers to enjoy leisurely meals without discomfort. In every way, the dining experience was carefully calibrated to combine elegance, comfort, and visual delight. Dining on the Titanic was also about ritual. Passengers quickly learned the etiquette of first-class meals, when to place napkins on laps, how to handle cutlery correctly, and the proper way to engage in conversation without disrupting the flow of the meal. These rituals reinforced social norms, providing a structured environment in which behavior, status, and taste were constantly observed and subtly evaluated. The very act of dining was both a practical necessity and a social performance, allowing passengers to demonstrate refinement, poise, and awareness of cultural expectations. Finally, the view from the dining room itself added another layer to the experience. Large windows offered glimpses of the open ocean, the rising sun, or the setting sky, connecting passengers to the vastness of the Atlantic even as they dined in comfort. The sight of waves gently lapping against the hull, the play of sunlight on the water, and the occasional glimpse of passing birds or distant ships added a dynamic, living element to the otherwise controlled environment of the dining room. Passengers could feel the motion of the ship, hear the distant sounds of the sea, and still remain cocooned in a world of refinement, luxury, and sensory delight. In essence, dining in first class aboard the Titanic was more than a meal. It was an immersive experience that combined food, service, architecture, music, and social performance into a seamless whole. Every aspect of the process, from entering the dining room to taking the final sip of wine, was designed to reinforce the sense of privilege, sophistication, and exclusivity that defined first-class life. It was a world in which comfort, elegance, and status were constantly celebrated, a floating palace in which every meal was a performance, and every course a carefully orchestrated masterpiece. For passengers, dining was both nourishment and theater, a daily affirmation of the luxury, refinement, and ambition that the Titanic represented in every detail. Life aboard the Titanic for first-class passengers extended far beyond the private luxury of cabins or the exquisite indulgence of the dining saloon. In many ways, the social spaces and entertainment offerings of the ship were the very heart of the first-class experience, providing a stage on which the elite could both relax and display their refinement, elegance, and status. These spaces were carefully designed to accommodate a range of activities, from quiet contemplation to vibrant social gatherings, each crafted to reinforce the impression that the Titanic was not merely a ship, but a floating world in which every aspect of daily life could be elevated to a performance of sophistication and taste. For passengers, life on deck, in lounges, or at social events was an opportunity to engage with their peers, to observe the world of privilege around them, and to immerse themselves in an environment that combined comfort, culture, and entertainment with a level of grandeur unparalleled in contemporary travel. The ship's public spaces for first-class passengers were remarkable in both scale and design. Lounges, reading rooms, and smoking rooms were adorned with polished woods, fine upholstery, and ornate decorative details, each space creating a distinct atmosphere suited to its purpose. The lounges were places for socializing, conversation, and relaxation, furnished with comfortable armchairs and sofas arranged to encourage dialogue while still maintaining a sense of privacy. The walls were lined with artwork, mirrors, and subtle ornamental features, creating an environment that was visually stimulating without being overwhelming. Reading rooms were quieter, designed for reflection, study, or the enjoyment of literature, complete with extensive collections of books, newspapers, and magazines from across Europe and America. Smoking rooms, heavily adorned with dark woods, leather chairs, and rich carpets, offered a masculine space where gentlemen could enjoy cigars, converse about business or politics, and engage in leisurely games of cards or chess. Each room was carefully curated, with decor and furnishings selected to provide comfort while also signaling the refined taste and cultural sophistication of the occupants. Central to the social life of first-class passengers was the grand staircase, which acted as both an architectural focal point and a social stage. This magnificent structure, with its sweeping oak balustrades, polished brass details, and crystal chandeliers, was a space where passengers could be seen, admired, and observed. The staircase connected multiple decks, allowing for fluid movement between cabins, lounges, and public spaces, and its openness encouraged casual encounters and social interaction. Passengers often paused on the staircase to exchange greetings, observe fellow travelers, or simply enjoy the view of the ship's interior. It was a space that reinforced the theatricality of social life on the Titanic, providing a constant backdrop for display, conversation, and observation. Formal events, such as dinners, dances, and receptions, were the pinnacle of social activity aboard the Titanic. These occasions were meticulously planned, with attention given not only to the quality of food and service, but also to the arrangement of spaces, the selection of music, and the coordination of lighting and decor. Ballrooms and dining areas were transformed for these events, with floral arrangements, decorative touches, and carefully selected table settings creating a sense of occasion and celebration. Music played a central role, whether provided by a small ensemble performing classical pieces or by a pianist offering lighter, popular tunes. Dancing was a key activity, with passengers gliding across polished floors in coordinated movements that reflected both skill and etiquette. Attendance at these events was a matter of social expectation, and participation was often an opportunity to demonstrate elegance, taste, and knowledge of proper conduct. The very act of attending, moving gracefully through the rooms, and engaging in conversation was part of the social performance, reinforcing both individual and collective status within the first-class hierarchy. Casual socialization was equally important. Throughout the day, passengers would gather in lounges, promenades, and decks, taking part in more relaxed forms of interaction. The first-class deck offered a particularly captivating space, with sweeping views of the Atlantic providing a dramatic and serene backdrop. Here, passengers could stroll, converse, or simply observe the vastness of the ocean stretching endlessly in all directions. The promenades encouraged movement and casual meetings, allowing individuals to engage with others while enjoying the open air, sunlight, or the cool breezes of the sea. Even the act of walking on deck was a statement of refinement. Attire, posture, and demeanor were carefully maintained, reflecting both personal pride and awareness of the gaze of others. First-class passengers understood that their behavior in public spaces was a form of social signaling, and the ship's design encouraged them to display it elegantly. Entertainment aboard the Titanic also included games, reading, and intellectual pursuits. Card games, chess, and other parlor games were common in lounges and designated areas, providing opportunities for both competition and camaraderie. Libraries, often stocked with a wide range of literature, newspapers, and periodicals, were spaces for quiet contemplation, study, or the enjoyment of storytelling. Passengers who engaged in intellectual pursuits demonstrated cultural literacy and refinement, signaling their participation in a world that valued education, sophistication, and conversation as much as wealth. The availability of these activities ensured that social engagement was not limited to formal events or casual promenades, but extended to private, introspective experiences that reinforced both individuality and status. The integration of leisure and social activity was further enhanced by the ship's specialized facilities. The Titanic featured a heated swimming pool, a gymnasium, and Turkish baths, each offering passengers an opportunity to combine physical exercise, relaxation, and social engagement. The gymnasium, equipped with the latest exercise equipment, allowed passengers to maintain fitness while engaging in conversation or observing others. The Turkish baths provided a space for rejuvenation and socializing, with steam rooms, hot and cold pools, and relaxation areas that encouraged both wellness and interaction. Even physical activity was an arena for display, where grace, posture, and composure were continuously reinforced as part of the broader social performance. Fashion played an integral role in social life aboard the Titanic. Women were expected to wear elegant gowns, gloves, hats, and jewelry, often changing attire multiple times throughout the day to reflect the occasion, time of day, or location. Men donned tailored suits or formal evening attire, maintaining a standard of dress that reflected their wealth and social awareness. The attention to dress reinforced both individuality and group identity, creating a visual language through which status, taste, and cultural literacy were communicated. Fashion was not merely about appearance, it was a critical element of social interaction, shaping perceptions and signaling membership within the exclusive world of first-class society. The interaction between passengers and crew also played a significant role in the social environment. Stewards, valets, and other staff were trained to anticipate needs, manage interactions, and maintain a level of decorum that reinforced the passengers' sense of privilege. Their presence was both subtle and essential, ensuring that the social fabric of first-class life remained uninterrupted, that events proceeded smoothly, and that passengers could fully immerse themselves in leisure, conversation, and performance. The relationship between passenger and staff was a delicate balance of service, respect, and observation, contributing to the overall impression of refinement and sophistication. Even the informal moments, such as shared laughter in lounges, quiet conversation in reading rooms, or idle observation on the deck, were imbued with meaning. These interactions reinforced social hierarchies, provided opportunities for networking, and contributed to the sense of community among first-class passengers. Observation was as important as participation. Passengers noted behaviors, gestures, and attire, continuously assessing the social landscape and adjusting their own conduct accordingly. Life aboard the Titanic was a constant negotiation of appearance, behavior, and social awareness, a dynamic environment in which every action carried weight and significance. Children and families also contributed to the social dynamics of first-class life. While adults engaged in formal social rituals, children played in supervised areas or on decks, their activities reflecting both the freedoms and restrictions of their social status. Families could share private moments in cabins or semi-public spaces, balancing intimacy with social visibility. The presence of children reinforced the notion of the Titanic as a self-contained world, accommodating the needs and expectations of passengers across generations while maintaining the overall structure of first-class society. Music and performance were central to entertainment and social interaction. Pianists, string ensembles, and occasional vocalists provided background music in lounges, dining areas, and decks, creating atmospheres suited to both relaxation and formal gatherings. Music served multiple purposes. It enhanced mood, facilitated social interaction, and reinforced cultural expectations. Passengers were expected to appreciate or at least acknowledge musical performances, and these moments of cultural engagement further emphasized the Titanic's role as a microcosm of refined society, a space where taste, education, and leisure intersected seamlessly. Even moments of solitude were structured within the broader context of social life. First-class passengers could find quiet corners in lounges, libraries, or on deck to read, reflect, or observe the sea, but even these private moments were experienced within the framework of a meticulously designed social environment. The architecture, furnishings, and atmosphere of each space subtly guided behavior, ensuring that passengers could enjoy solitude without disconnecting from the social fabric. The careful orchestration of spaces, activities, and interactions created a balance between individual experience and communal participation, reinforcing the sense of a cohesive, privileged world. The psychological impact of this social environment cannot be overstated. First-class passengers experienced a sense of belonging, exclusivity, and privilege, knowing that they were part of a select group afforded access to unparalleled spaces, services, and experiences. Every interaction, every event, and every observation contributed to a complex social ecosystem in which status, taste, and behavior were constantly reinforced. The Titanic's design, staffing, and programming ensured that passengers were never removed from this context. They were continually reminded of their position, their privilege, and the sophistication expected of them. In this way, social life aboard the Titanic was not merely entertainment. It was a structured, immersive, and ongoing performance of refinement, culture, and status. The social life aboard the Titanic also reflected broader trends in early 20th century society. It embodied the values of an elite class, emphasizing refinement, cultural literacy, and public display. It demonstrated the belief that luxury, taste, and education were inseparable from wealth and privilege. Passengers participated in a microcosm of society in which social norms were amplified, reinforced, and celebrated, providing both opportunity and expectation for performance. In every corridor, lounge, deck, and ballroom, the Titanic acted as both a literal and symbolic stage for the enactment of these values, creating a rich tapestry of experience that went far beyond the practicalities of travel. In essence, the social life and entertainment of Titanic's first-class passengers were central to the overall experience of luxury, comfort, and privilege. Every activity, from formal balls to casual deck promenades, from card games to musical performances, was designed to reinforce status, facilitate social interaction, and immerse passengers in a world carefully curated for refinement and spectacle. The ship itself, with its architecture, decor, and staff, orchestrated these interactions, ensuring that the first-class experience was seamless, immersive, and unforgettable. It was a world in which social performance, cultural sophistication, and leisure converged, creating an environment that was at once exhilarating, comforting, and aspirational, a floating society in miniature, suspended above the Atlantic, and moving inexorably toward both adventure and, ultimately, tragedy. Life aboard the RMS Titanic for first-class passengers was not merely about crossing the Atlantic. It was about inhabiting a world in which every need, desire, and whim could be anticipated and fulfilled with elegance and precision. The ship was a self-contained universe, designed to provide comfort, luxury, and entertainment on a scale unprecedented in maritime history. Central to this experience were the leisure and recreational facilities, which offered passengers an extraordinary array of opportunities to relax, socialize, and maintain both body and mind in a state of refinement and satisfaction. From swimming pools to Turkish baths, from libraries to gymnasiums, every facility was carefully conceived to reinforce the impression that life aboard the Titanic was both elevated and extraordinary, a daily affirmation of status, privilege, and sophistication. The heated swimming pool aboard the Titanic was one of the most remarkable facilities available to first-class passengers, at a time when indoor swimming pools were rare, particularly on ships. The presence of a pool represented a level of luxury and modernity that few could imagine. The pool itself was designed with elegance in mind, featuring polished tiles, ornate railings, and a clean, inviting atmosphere that encouraged both exercise and leisure. Men and women alike could enjoy swimming under the guidance of lifeguards or attendants, and the pool became a place for both physical activity and social interaction. For some, it was an opportunity to maintain fitness. For others, it was a retreat from the formality of daily life aboard the ship, a place where they could relax, converse casually, or simply observe the sunlight reflecting on the water. The combination of design, atmosphere, and social opportunity made the swimming pool a central feature of first-class leisure. The gymnasium aboard the Titanic further enhanced the options for physical activity. Equipped with state-of-the-art exercise machines, including rowing machines, stationary bicycles, and pulley systems, the gymnasium provided passengers with a space to maintain health, stamina, and composure. For men, the gym was often a place for competition and camaraderie, where strength and skill could be observed and admired. For women, exercise was more than physical training. It was a socially sanctioned activity that reflected attention to personal well-being and the values of refinement. Trainers and attendants were present to guide exercises, ensure safety, and maintain order, creating an environment in which the physical and social aspects of leisure were seamlessly intertwined. The gymnasium represented a recognition that first-class passengers valued both appearance and vitality, and it offered a unique opportunity to combine discipline, sport, and social observation. Turkish baths aboard the Titanic were another remarkable amenity, reflecting both the era's fascination with health and hygiene and the desire to provide a luxurious environment for relaxation. The baths included steam rooms, hot and cold plunge pools, and areas for relaxation and massage, all designed to refresh the body and calm the mind. Patrons could spend hours moving through a carefully orchestrated sequence of heat, steam, and water, emerging revitalized and ready to resume social activity. These baths were not only therapeutic but also social, providing a space where passengers could interact informally while enjoying a private, exclusive experience. The combination of physical well-being and social engagement made the Turkish baths an essential part of first-class life, reinforcing both the sophistication and the self-indulgence expected of passengers in this privileged environment. Reading and writing were also considered vital aspects of leisure aboard the Titanic. The libraries were stocked with an impressive collection of books, newspapers, and periodicals from Europe and North America, offering passengers the opportunity to immerse themselves in literature, stay informed about current events, or simply enjoy quiet contemplation. Comfortable chairs and tables were arranged to facilitate reading or writing, often near windows that provided natural light and views of the ocean. These spaces allowed passengers to cultivate the mind while remaining part of the elegant, socially rich environment of the ship. Writing letters or keeping journals was common, and the act of correspondence reinforced both social connections and personal reflection. The library, in essence, was a sanctuary for intellectual engagement, offering a balance to the more active or social pursuits of first-class life. Card rooms, smoking rooms, and other leisure spaces were also integral to the passenger experience. Card games and board games provided entertainment, competition, and social bonding, while smoking rooms offered a masculine space for conversation, relaxation, and observation. These areas were furnished with attention to comfort and aesthetics, combining polished wood, leather seating, and decorative details that reflected the refinement expected of first-class passengers. The presence of such spaces encouraged both formal and informal social interaction, allowing passengers to choose the type of leisure that suited their preferences, whether contemplative, competitive, or social. Dining itself could be considered a leisure activity, particularly in the context of afternoon tea or formal events. Passengers could enjoy delicate pastries, teas, and light refreshments in lounges or on deck, using these moments to socialize, observe, or simply relax. The orchestration of these activities reflected the Titanic's philosophy of leisure. Every opportunity, whether for physical activity, intellectual engagement, or social interaction, was designed to be seamless, elegant, and tailored to the expectations of first-class passengers. Even seemingly simple acts, such as reading a newspaper or walking on deck, were elevated into experiences through careful design, attentive staff, and the quality of the surroundings. The deck promenades provided perhaps the most iconic leisure spaces aboard the Titanic. These wide, open areas allowed passengers to walk, converse, or simply enjoy the panoramic views of the Atlantic Ocean. The design encouraged movement and social engagement, while the scale and openness offered a sense of freedom and perspective that contrasted with the structured interior spaces. Passengers could stroll in the morning sunlight, watch the waves crash against the hull, or observe the vast horizon stretching endlessly in every direction. The promenades were equipped with comfortable seating, railings, and shaded areas, allowing passengers to enjoy the environment regardless of weather conditions. The combination of natural beauty, architectural design, and social opportunity made these decks central to the first-class experience, reinforcing both the aesthetic and social dimensions of leisure aboard the ship. Attentive staff enhanced every aspect of leisure and recreation. Stewards, valets, and other personnel were trained to anticipate needs, provide assistance, and maintain the elegance and order of each space. Their presence was discreet yet essential, ensuring that passengers could enjoy each facility without interruption or inconvenience. Whether adjusting lighting, providing towels for the pool, assisting with gym equipment, or serving refreshments, the staff played a central role in creating an environment in which leisure, comfort, and refinement were seamlessly integrated. The presence of highly trained personnel contributed to the sense of privilege and exclusivity that defined first-class life, allowing passengers to focus entirely on enjoyment, social interaction, and personal well-being. Even the smallest details of leisure were carefully curated, from the arrangement of chairs and tables to the selection of reading materials and the placement of decorative elements. Every aspect of the environment reinforced the overall impression of elegance, refinement, and exclusivity. Carpets, upholstery, and woodwork were chosen for both comfort and visual appeal, while lighting, ventilation, and climate control were designed to enhance the experience of every activity. Whether engaging in physical exercise, social conversation, or quiet contemplation, passengers were enveloped in an environment that combined practicality, beauty, and sophistication, creating a sense of immersion that was both exhilarating and reassuring. The psychological impact of these leisure facilities was significant. Passengers experienced a sense of control, freedom, and privilege, knowing that every aspect of their environment had been designed to meet their desires and expectations. Physical comfort, intellectual stimulation, social engagement, and aesthetic pleasure were all seamlessly integrated, creating a comprehensive and immersive experience. The facilities aboard the Titanic allowed passengers to structure their days according to personal preference, balancing activity and relaxation, solitude and socialization, indulgence and reflection. This degree of autonomy, combined with the constant presence of refined surroundings and attentive service, reinforced the perception that first-class passengers were living in a world apart, one in which every aspect of life had been elevated to the level of art. The integration of leisure with social hierarchy was also evident. Certain facilities were exclusive to first-class passengers, reinforcing distinctions between classes and maintaining the privileged nature of the experience. Access to the pool, gymnasium, Turkish baths, and lounges was controlled, ensuring that these spaces remained comfortable, orderly, and reflective of the social status of those using them. The exclusivity of these amenities contributed to the overall sense of prestige and refinement, emphasizing that first-class life was defined not only by luxury, but also by the ability to participate in experiences unavailable to others. This exclusivity heightened the allure of leisure, transforming routine activities into markers of privilege and distinction. Family life was woven into the leisure experience as well. Families traveling together could enjoy shared activities in designated areas or within private suites, balancing the needs of adults and children with the broader social expectations of first-class life. Children were supervised yet allowed opportunities for play, intellectual development, and observation of social norms. Families could stroll on deck, visit the library, or engage in games together, providing continuity of social interaction while reinforcing familial bonds. The thoughtful integration of family-oriented leisure ensured that the ship catered to the needs of all passengers, maintaining the balance between exclusivity, refinement, and accessibility. Health and well-being were also central to leisure aboard the Titanic. In addition to physical activity in the pool and gymnasium, passengers could benefit from fresh air on deck, exposure to sunlight, and relaxation in climate-controlled spaces. The emphasis on wellness reflected contemporary ideals about the importance of balancing body and mind, and the Titanic offered an unprecedented level of support for these practices. Even simple walks along the deck or time spent reading in a sunlit lounge contributed to the overall sense of well-being, reinforcing the perception that life aboard the ship was designed to nurture both physical and psychological health. Art, music, and culture were seamlessly integrated into leisure activities. Pianists, ensembles, and solo performers provided background music in lounges, dining areas, and social halls, enhancing the atmosphere of relaxation or celebration. Paintings, murals, and decorative art adorned public and private spaces, providing visual stimulation and reinforcing the cultural sophistication of the ship. Passengers were encouraged to appreciate, discuss, and participate in cultural experiences, further enhancing the sense that first-class life was both educational and indulgent, pleasurable and intellectually stimulating. The combination of aesthetic beauty, refined activity, and attentive service created an environment in which every moment of leisure was enriched and elevated. In essence, the leisure and recreational facilities aboard the Titanic were central to the first-class experience, providing passengers with opportunities for physical activity, relaxation, social interaction, intellectual engagement, and cultural enrichment. Each facility, from the swimming pool to the gymnasium, from the Turkish baths to the libraries and lounges, was carefully designed to support a lifestyle of privilege, refinement, and sophistication. The integration of design, service, and social expectation ensured that passengers could enjoy leisure in a manner that was both immersive and elevating, transforming ordinary activities into experiences of luxury and distinction. The Titanic was more than a ship. It was a world in which leisure, comfort, and culture converged, offering first-class passengers a level of indulgence and opportunity that had never before been imagined, and that would forever be remembered as a pinnacle of human achievement, ambition, and design. For all the grandeur, luxury, and sophistication aboard the Titanic, there was a reality beneath the surface, a tension between opulence and the fragile circumstances that the ship itself represented. First-class life, with its richly appointed cabins, elegant dining, and meticulously orchestrated leisure, existed within a vessel that was, at its core, a feat of human engineering, navigating the unpredictable and often unforgiving Atlantic. Passengers could lose themselves in the splendor of the ship's interiors, the precision of its service, and the carefully cultivated social environment. Yet the reality of their situation remained inescapably tied to the physical and technical nature of the voyage. The Titanic, despite its modernity and reputation as unsinkable, was still a massive construct of steel and wood, subject to the forces of nature, the limitations of technology, and the unpredictability of circumstance. First-class passengers, for all their comfort and privilege, were not insulated from the underlying vulnerability of the journey they had embarked upon. The very notion of safety was one of the most profound contrasts aboard the Titanic. First-class passengers, surrounded by opulent surroundings, could enjoy private cabins with en-suite bathrooms, heated rooms, and fine furnishings, all designed to create the illusion of a perfect, controlled environment. Yet beneath this veneer, the ship's capacity for danger was real. Lifeboats, for example, were insufficient to accommodate all passengers, a fact that would become tragically evident during the ship's fateful voyage. The reliance on technology and human planning, combined with a sense of hubris in the vessel's design, created a fragile foundation beneath the surface of first-class comfort. Passengers could wander the decks, stroll through lounges, or recline in reading rooms, all the while oblivious to the stark reality that the Atlantic was a vast and indifferent force, capable of overwhelming even the most carefully constructed human achievement. The structure of the ship itself, while monumental and awe-inspiring, carried limitations. The steel hull, watertight compartments, and state-of-the-art engines represented the cutting edge of early 20th century engineering, yet they were not infallible. The Titanic's design emphasized luxury, aesthetics, and comfort for first-class passengers, often prioritizing elegance over redundancy or comprehensive safety. The lavish interiors, intricate woodwork, and delicate finishes were testament to human ingenuity, yet they also underscored the delicate balance between opulence and practicality. Every polished surface, gilded banister, and crystal chandelier was evidence of an environment designed for beauty and comfort. But these features could not mitigate the consequences of collision, flooding, or other catastrophic events. The reality of the ship's vulnerability contrasted sharply with the apparent invincibility perceived by those who walked its decks. The social hierarchy that defined first-class life also highlighted the disparities and inherent vulnerabilities aboard the ship. While passengers could enjoy exclusive access to lounges, dining rooms, promenades, and recreational facilities, these privileges did not equate to immunity from disaster. The structure of first-class society, with its emphasis on etiquette, appearance, and privilege, created a sense of security and entitlement, yet it also masked the underlying reality that the ocean did not distinguish between wealth, status, or influence. The expectation of safety was reinforced by the very environment that made first-class life luxurious. The staff, the private suites, the promenades, and the lounges all suggested a world in which comfort and control were absolute, yet these perceptions could not protect passengers from the ultimate forces of nature, even within the carefully seated